This is the CW Spiral, a podcast run by three survivors of the CW's calling in 2022. We're your hosts, Sabrina Reed,
Michael Patterson,
and Reed Gowden,
bringing you history about the network and the WB, the latest news and in-depth Sporterville discussions of the best and messiest shows to ever grace the small screen. Okay, we are back, and we have CW things to talk about, but first, we're going to lead out with a superhero show, because as we're recording this, there is an anniversary happening for The Flash, so I'm going to pass it to Michael.
Yep, April 25th, 2024. That is a date that has been on my mind for the last decade. I can't even believe I'm saying that. And so many other Flash fans as well. Yeah, April 25th, 2024 is the date that Barry Allen was originally supposed to vanish in the Crisis. We first found that out in the pilot episode of The Flash when the Reverse Flash opened up the newspaper in the cortex of Star Labs, and we saw that newspaper headline written by Iris West Allen from April 25th, 2024. It seemed like so far off in the future. The Flash obviously changed throughout the course of its run when it became clear that it wasn't going to make it to 2024. We had the Crisis in 2019 instead. Timeline mumbo jumbo changed everything, and it was ultimately the Barry Allen of Earth 90, played by John Wesley Shipp, who vanished in the Crisis, and not our Barry Allen. But like, as an original endgame for the Flash, no matter what season we were in for those first 5 years, that date hung in the back of your head. So yeah, it's wild that we actually made it here. It always felt like it was so far off in the future and something that would never happen. But as soon as it turned 2024, I seen my timeline was filled with tweets about how this is the year that Barry Allen's supposed to vanish, and suddenly here we've made it to the day. Yeah, it's sad that the Flash is not on, because that would have been we're coming up on season finale time. Let's be honest, time of year. It would have been pretty epic if the Flash actually closed out its 10-season run on April 25th, 2024. We didn't quite make it, so we had to settle with May 23rd, 2023. But you know what?
I love that you have that like right off the top of your head.
I think it was May 23rd. Don't quote me on that. And we got a few more threes.
No, you're right. I know you're right. We didn't have to fact check.
But I mean, we got close. The Flash had an incredible run, and if you want to hear our thoughts on some of the last seasons, you can definitely go back and listen to some of our episodes. But I mean, like, just the fact that we made it here, I'm feeling very nostalgic today about what the show was, about that first season, and about the fact that I'm 10 years older than I was when that date entered my head, and I don't know how to feel about that. But yeah, it's pretty cool that we made it to this point. As a Flash fan, it was like, yeah, that date's off in the future. That date's off in the future. Well, here we are, and the Crisis is not happening. Barry Allen is safe, at least for the time being. Yeah. But yeah, I just wanted to take a moment to mark the anniversary, because again, my timeline is full of tweets about it and any excuse to talk about the Flash, but this feels like one of the more poignant ones.
It is strange, though, that it's an anniversary about a disappearance.
That we knew was going to happen in advance.
Yes. But I mean, you're right. It does bring call to attention how long, we've all lived with this show. And then I don't know, I've got a bit of bitterness, but you already know about that. If you listen to any of our reviews, it's that at one point, that was going to be the series ender. We were going to figure out whether or not they were going to be able to bring him back. But because the crossover happened, the multiverse crossover happened, we did not get that, and the Flash had to change its entire story to make some sort of sense. It did not land that plane, but it is still something. I think it's a cultural juggernaut. And Michael, is this the last date that anyone gets to celebrate an anniversary for the Flash in terms of in the show?
I was just gonna ask that, Sabrina.
Brain, we're there. Here.
I was like, what can I contribute? I could contribute that question.
Well, at least until 2049. Remember those last couple of seasons were obsessed with going to 2049, and Jay Garrick, who is like 60 right now, still looks exactly the same in 2049. Cecile will be 80, and she still looks like she's in her 40s. Time just moves differently on the Flash, apparently. So until we get to 2049, as far as I'm aware, all the Flash dates have come and gone. If we're still doing this podcast in 2049, I can celebrate those dates then.
Oh, we could even compile together. Remember younger us?
Way back.
Oh, no.
But yes, great. So happy anniversary to everybody in the Flash fandom of Barry's disappearance. I wonder if Grant will actually make another video
He
to
did
celebrate
post on
it.
social media a picture of himself, I think from 2016, wearing like a Flash dressing gown, saying, just can confirm that the Flash did, in fact, not disappear on April 25th,
Aw,
2024.
that's
Um,
so
so
nice.
it's nice to see everyone marking the occasion. I have no doubt DC will post a video about it later, like they did on the date where he traveled to the future. I saw Discussing Film posting about it earlier, and it's already been liked and interacted by over 80,000 people. So yeah, it's going to be a big day for the Flash fandom, and I just wanted to take a moment to mark it.
Yay.
Yay,
S-
Flash.
Speaking of the future, though,
Hmm.
we are entering the danger zone because May is around the corner, which means cancellation season is coming. Um, We are in, I guess, the last bit of the pre-Nexstar CW Originals roster. It's only All-American, All-American Homecoming, and Walker that is left. And recent reporting from Deadline has suggested that we might be in for yet another axing. And this has to do, it's interesting because this has to do with, not with necessarily ratings, but with licensing fees. The news that's not so surprising, though, is if there's one show that is going to make it out of this season alive that has a path towards getting another season, it is All American.
Mhm.
That's that's pretty ironic to me. I will say that. And maybe that's just because we don't have All American over here. But based on numbers and everything, when all this cancellation season started, everyone was like, "Well, it's going to be Walker versus Superman and Lois because they were the two most watched shows." And yet here we are. Walker's future is uncertain. We know Superman and Lois is in. All American still seems like the dead search for a renewal. I mean, like that show has a lot of fight in it, but it's clearly very popular. It survived the first wave of renewals and cancellations for the simple fact that that was part of the deal that Nexstar picked the CW up, was that that show got an automatic renewal. So of course we've reached the crossroads now where will it continue on past that? I have a feeling it will. I know that feels like an obvious thing to say since the reporting sounds promising, but yeah, it feels like this is the one that they're putting most of their hopes and dreams in, and that they're going to work the hardest to get for another season. It makes sense. It's the network's flagship show right now, so I can see why.
Mm,
It does. It concerns me though, if I'm being honest. Like, um, my hope in like a perfect world, which we obviously do not live in, would be that it would be also up to the creatives behind the shows.
mm,
Hmm.
It's like, hey, we're thinking about renewing your show, and if they were like, no, we're good, because it's not just they would be making another season of the same show, it would be different. There are strings attached with potentially All American coming back for another season. It would look different, and sometimes that can be a nail in the coffin for shows. And then fans, if they stick around for the soft launch reboot season, that's usually the final one.
Hmm.
It's you get a bitter taste in your mouth. So I don't know. I'm concerned, I think, for fans of All American. If they want a new season and they don't care who's in it, then by all means. But I know as a fan of TV, it stresses me out when that happens to my shows, and I'm like, could you have just like given it its proper ending instead of
Yeah.
trying to continue to milk it for business
hmm
reasons that are very apparent?
It's very, I mean, everyone who's been paying attention is aware of why All American would move forward under this umbrella. I mean, for those who don't know, a new season, when Reed says like a soft launch reboot, they mean that they're going to bring in younger characters, new characters, because the actors who are on the show, they've been on there for quite some time, which comes with pay raises. And if we're going to continue to have a licensing fee that is around $1 million to $1.5 million per episode, or they're going to decrease it for the next season, they have to find cuts somewhere. And the cut would be cutting the main cast. And not in a way that like they'd be reduced to like recurring characters. It most likely would be that they would not be on the show anymore, especially because it makes the most sense for characters like Spencer James and Jordan Baker because they are both up for the NFL draft this season, I guess, or at least that's the goal that they're reaching toward. And that would bring the story full circle because the whole point from the beginning was that Spencer wanted to make it to the NFL. And if he does, and the CW has no intention on or doesn't plan on helping to provide the budget for a season that would take place in the NFL, we would sunset his story, and it'd be a nice wrap, but also would be a nice wrap for the series altogether if that's what
Sure.
they wanted to do, rather than either putting us back in high school, so once again we're in a teen drama, or dropping us with a cast of young college students so that we have another college drama on the CW. It's a bit, I mean, it really just depends on what the team wants to do. If the team wants to stop, I would like them to just stop, like the CW to be
Yeah.
like, thank you for all that you've given to the network. We appreciate your service.
There's also instances where like the network and studio intend to continue with the show, and the showrunner, creator, whoever is like, well, this is where I leave you, and they no
Yeah.
longer have they leave their show, and it just becomes its own thing. I'm sure
They're
we're all thinking
cookie.
of an example. Yeah,
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
I was
That's the
gonna
one.
say.
That's the one.
So
Yes.
like that, it runs the risk of doing that as well. But yeah, there's a lot of variables. I don't know.
Hmm.
Hmm. No, Supernatural completely changed after Eric Kripke left. It had a 5 year plan. After that, it became procedural, like a season of the week, season of the year, and very, very standalone stories. Um, and I know, I think looking at the reports, the thing you can kind of glean is that they keep saying it was supposed to come full circle, 7 seasons in, 7 seasons in, 7 seasons in. But the thing that kind of got buried at this past week is that All American season 6 has been expanded by a couple of episodes. Um,
Hmm.
and this is the same CW that insisted that nothing gets expanded. We're sticking with 13 episodes. Superman at Lois Blessed only got 10. Um, so it definitely does sound like the rumors and the reports of whatever season 7 was supposed to be to bring the story full circle. The extra episodes in season 6 are going to be used for that so that we can hit the relaunch button on season 7.
That's an
Um,
interesting point. I didn't think of that because they could have been tacked on as like a is fail-safe the word? Is that a
mhm.
word?
Yeah,
Expand.
I
It's
don't
a
know.
it's a word,
yeah.
but expand. What do you mean?
Like if they were plotting the season, they were like, "Oh, we can't one land the plane, two tease a potential season 7." Like maybe it is like a 2-hour series finale epilogue or something,
Mm,
or it is like the soft launch, like you bridge the gap. So either way, whatever they do with those 2 episodes can either end the show or continue it. I don't know if
Yeah.
mhm.
fail-safe is the right word. I'm trying to use words that I've only heard or read.
And I
No,
do
I
understand what you mean. Oh, go ahead,
yeah.
Michael.
No, I was just going to say I also see the thinking. It does feel like they're trying to cover themselves, but at the same time leave it open. Like it does sound like honestly, if we can, I don't want to say it's certain, but it does sound like if there's any certainty right now is that the show will be back for another season. The uncertain thing is what it'll look like. And there's a sad irony in the fact in that it was one of the only shows that didn't have to go through the cast cuts or the like significant budget decreases. Um, and yet now it's the one that could suffer from that the most because yes, a lot of the shows lost cast members or their budgets were decreased, but this show could lose all of its primary cast members and the budget could be decreased. We never know what it's going to look like after that. Um, and it's like we've seen this happen with so many shows. People are like, "Oh, it's the reboot," and you're like, "You're 7 seasons in. Of course, the ratings have dropped since. No new viewers are tuning into this. Like, if the first version of the show couldn't get the new viewers, it's unlikely that the second version will." Um, Deadline referenced Glee as that for an example as well. After season 3, they were like, "Oh, we're doing a soft relaunch," and then by the end of season 6, it was all the focus was back on the OGs because people didn't care that much about the new characters. Um, Same thing happened with Once Upon a Time. Uh, Bye bye, everybody. Come season 7 finale, everybody's back. We were back, farewell again. And it's like, is this what's going to happen with All American? Is it going to be that there's a brand new start, fresh new era at the start of season 7, but by the end of season 7, the original cast members are back to wave the show off once and for all, and thus the newbies then get overlooked and they're pushed to the background? There's so many conflicting feelings there. As a fan of the original, you just like it to go out as it is. Whatever fans are going to get fall in love with the newer characters won't like that they'll be pushed to the background for the original ones to come back. It won't feel like the same show. I would say this would be the time to do a spin-off, but we're already doing that with All American Homecoming, and its future sounds as uncertain as it has the whole way through. It's managed to survive up to this point, but will it be third time unlucky for it?
That is the question. And I know for fans of the show, like no one wants to hear. it's not long for this world. Not to mention because we haven't seen the material of season three, but it's just the way that it's being positioned. So
Mm,
it was not considered a tentpole, so they left it for the summer. Like they cannot start its third season until All American finishes its season six run. And because they've added two episodes, it's pushed it further into the summer. We all know how summer works for the CW, or really any of the networks. I think Stargirl survived it and got moved to the fall, right? Because it did so well.
mm,
Tom Swift did not. It was dropped in the summer and then left to do what it could on its own with very little promotion. Uh, I have a feeling that All American Homecoming is not going to be promoted the way that Sullivan's Crossing was, or that Wild Cards was. And we know this because All American didn't get the same push that those two shows did. Walker is living on a hope and a prayer in its own its own success that it has driven. Because I have not, I mean, at least with All American, I feel like I've seen more promotion. With Walker, not so much. Um, so I mean, I feel bad saying it, but it also is a series that had went through major budget cuts for it to even get to its third season. And I don't see that literally you could not cut anymore. Like
mhm.
there's just really how in order to make like a season four happen. But it might be that little show that could. You know, we might be naysaying and CW is like, run it again. They can do it on the budget they have. But then again, that would also be up to the creative team. Like, how stressful was it creating season three? Were you able to
Mhm.
Yeah.
do the stories that you wanted to do? Was it very limiting? Or would you rather, you know what? We're just going to end season three.
Mhm.
Yeah. The thing about summer too is that post-COVID, the CW, I think, more so than any other network, tried to make summer, they tried to disguise summer as like a there's no boundaries. We can do whatever we want. We'll run our biggest shows in the summer. We didn't Riverdale air in the summer at one
Yeah.
point, and
Mm-hmm.
Dynasty, they didn't
Because it
care.
had to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but like this new era, they've made such conscious efforts to operate like their peers and to get back into the like fall mid-season swing of things. So
Mm-hmm.
that by putting something in the summer, it doesn't feel like the biggest vote of confidence as it might
Mhm.
have been with the old guard at the CW, where they were like, you know what, we're gonna air in the summer because no one else does.
Yeah.
But you're right, Sabrina, like network TV doesn't usually put stuff that they seriously care about in the summer. There's
Mm-hmm.
generally like a couple scripted stuff shows on in the summer on the network TV, and they try to get that summer hit. I don't have
Mhm.
any examples, but I can think of them in my head. Didn't ABC have that one like soap like Devious Maids or like
I don't know when it
something?
aired. I'm sure it's what they I mean they want the networks tend to sometimes have, one show that they want to launch. But have you noticed when if it does well in the summer, then they automatically move it to the fall or the mid-season? Because they're
Yeah.
like, oh, you played well. We're gonna move you into our the roster we actually care about.
Sometimes they do keep them in
Mhm.
the summer though, I feel like. Didn't CBS have like Under the Dome or something? Was
Mm,
Is
that
that
a
two
that's right.
seasons though?
I have no idea. I should have done some research.
Well, because see, when I think of summer broadcast, well, when I think of summer TV shows, not podcasts, they're actually on the cable networks, right? So I'm thinking
Yeah.
like that's when, HBO drops their big shows. It's
Mhm.
when back
USA
when
used to have that down.
yes. And then Freeform, back when it was ABC Family and Freeform used to do that, like so you would sort of move away from network and go straight to cable during the summer, and then you join network again in the fall, unless you really enjoy a game show. They have their finger on the pulse with the game show.
It is true though, because obviously this summer we know that there are big shows like House of the Dragon and The Boys coming out during the summer. So it does feel like the universe is resetting itself in the way that it originally was. The network TV tends to run throughout the rest of the year, and the bigger shows tend to come either in January or the summer. That I get it. That makes sense from that standpoint. And I don't think like it would be all purely speculation on our parts if we just had this information with no commentary from it. But what Brad said about Superman and Lois versus the lack of what's been said about All American Homecoming really doesn't paint it in the best light. Like he knew Superman and Lois. This is the show that has had hiatus after hiatus after hiatus because they aired it too early. Not only is he keeping it until it's filmed, by the way, shout out to the show we just wrapped filming this week. So congratulations to that show on an incredible 4 season run. Um, the show's ready. Well, it will be in the next couple of weeks and months. Like you could start that run maybe towards the later summer, but no, Brad's perfectly happy with keeping that until the fall because he wants to treat it like the main event that it is. And it deserves that. And I love the fact that even though it technically finished in this season, it gets to air as a next season show. We'll keep the run going for a little bit longer and live in the moment. I love that. But the fact that he made those comments about how we're going to treat it like it's a big cinematic showdown and is going to buy out like any big network TV should versus the lack of commentary about All American Homecoming, which is going to quietly air in the summer.
Who knows? Maybe they would keep it for the summer. If they're like, it did fine in the summer, we'll keep All American in the fall and we'll keep Homecoming in the summer.
It
Mm.
does
But who
make you
knows?
wonder. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
I do wonder if maybe it's to do with the Netflix deal. Doesn't that show going to go to Netflix afterwards? Maybe they have to have it aired quicker than that. Who knows? But I guess the fact that it is going to air during the summer means that a decision will be made on it maybe even sooner than the other shows. I don't know because we need to know. They need to know whether it's coming back or not. Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. Obviously, I read that the three shows that are currently still original CW shows are more expensive because all three of them are shot in the US. Superman and Lois was shot in Canada, but obviously the budget needed to be slashed for other reasons. So I don't know. Maybe we thought Superman and Lois was in a worse off position, but maybe being filmed in Canada protected that. With these shows being filmed in the US, when we know that the CW is moving towards Canadian-based productions like Wildcards because of how much cheaper they are to produce in that country. Will the next season have all three shows left? Who knows?
I mean, it's a big question, and even with which is disappointing for the Walker fandom is that Walker is the most watched show on the CW. But even with them reportedly, because the deadline says that they're coming in a little over the $500,000 per episode threshold. Even with that, then it becomes, is that even enough for the studio? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and if it decreases, the studio might be the ones that like, you know what, we had a good run because it's not enough. Like you mentioned, if it's not a international co-production, trying to do a show at that budget point isn't feasible in the US. It's just not. Like they're gonna have to start, if it decreases, they're gonna have to start digging into other areas that they need to cut. Lighting packages, like other areas of the amount of time that they shoot, where they shoot. Like it would just
And
be
cast.
in cast.
Mm.
So
Because, I mean, Jared probably has a price tag
I would think so.
as an actor and
Hmm.
producer.
Like at what point does
And
it
that gets
then
more
become,
expensive
it
as
gets
it
more
goes on.
expensive. And so season 5 would be what, him alone on the road? Like doing doing
Him and a
some,
horse.
yeah, him and a horse, like just which I'm sure they would probably do like a really good case of that follows the entire season. But do people really want to see him on his own without the rest of the players for the
Mm,
show? It's very
But
transparent though
it's
what
not
they would need to
sustainable.
do. No, that would have to be the final season, and then you'd be. I feel like as a fan of a show, you'd be upset that in the final season, most likely you wouldn't see the other characters until the last episode.
I mean,
Yeah.
that does, I mean, unfortunately, but also, I guess kind of fortunately, bittersweetly, budgetary restrictions can also hinder creativity, but also, help foster more creativity because you have to try to find ways to work around not having a ton of money. And that's
Mm,
kind of where bottle episodes were born in like 90s sitcoms because you have this 24 episode order. You can't be like um building a ton of sets, so you keep your main cast in one setting and you try to craft a really creative but entertaining episode with just your own resources, so you're not spending any extra money. And that's a little bit more difficult to do with a drama series that
Mm.
has a big world, but that's why I say it's like fortunate but unfortunate because it's unfortunate that creatives have to have limitations. Um, but I think that challenge is really could be interesting and can make for really great television sometimes when someone cooks up a revolutionary episode of television with just, the coupon that they're given from the studio.
They're often the ones that then are remembered for years to come after that. So,
Yeah, like some
mhm.
of the biggest episodes of Friends that are like beloved are just the six of them in Monica's apartment, or which the the usual sets. Nothing else. No bells and whistles, no guest stars. It's just the six of them in a good script.
Hmm.
Mm.
Sometimes that's all you need. And
Yeah.
if a final season's done right, it can have a good few scripts. I hate to keep mentioning, but yes, we've mentioned a final season before that completely dropped the ball at missed things. But
Oh,
in
what
it,
show are you talking about?
I have no idea.
Oh.
What date is it today? Moving past that. Um, but yeah,
I think
it's
we were
just.
talking about two different shows, but continue.
Oh, I'm not going to mention the other one.
Let me
Uh,
serve that tea again while you talk, Michael. Keep going.
Yeah, okay, no worries. Um, but yeah, no, final seasons in this era, we're seeing a lot of things experiment, and sometimes it works out really, really well, sometimes it doesn't. It's just that's the art of television making, I guess. There is going to be experimentation involved. I do hope for the Walker fans it does get one more season. And I hate that I even have to say that because that was the show based on what Nexstar wanted for the network that seemed like it could have lasted the longest out of all of them. It was one of the younger ones by the time this whole rebrand happened. Um, it seemed to be more in the vein of like the mature, slightly Western, although in Walker's case it's more Western, tint that the network is heading towards. It felt like it should have been a shoe-in for a lot longer, but like y'all said, if it's paying a lower licensing fee, that means the studio has to pay a higher fee. And yeah, I don't know whether I do have to ask. I don't think Walker is like as marketable outside of the US as like some of the other CW shows are. I know it's huge domestically, but I don't. I know the
Walker's
Walk.
huge?
I know. I
Is
know,
that what
but
you're
I
asking?
yes, Walker. Yes, I was like, I know it is huge in the US on the CW, like, and that the Walker Texas Ranger
Brand, yeah.
IP is
Mm.
huge. But I don't know if this reboot has made it outside of the US in the way that the original series did. If you know what I mean.
Um,
Mm. Is it
I
available on Max internationally? I'm
well,
not
Michael
sure.
doesn't even have Max.
No.
Yeah, well, that's true. But like I don't remember what regions Max is available in outside of the US because they did launch, right? Or is that this year? Is that summer
Some
2024?
of the ones in other areas of Europe, I think, launched this year or a year ago, something like that,
Oh,
or it
okay.
is launching soon. Still not coming my way yet, but we'll get there.
I mean, when you put reboot against reboot, because CBS Paramount did a ton of them on the CW, like they were doing nostalgia farming on CW in the past, like at the end of the 2010s decade. If you put Walker up against Dynasty, I mean, yeah, people might know Walker Texas Ranger a little bit more in the United States or remember a little bit better. But I feel like internationally, Dynasty was a huge hit on Netflix.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And there's probably probably the same amount that probably don't know that the reboots either one exactly
Yeah.
Dynasty or Walker. Because that's just how it goes with CW sometimes. I don't know what point I was trying to prove, but
Um,
Well,
yeah, I don't know. What was I
oh, oh, well, so
saying?
there's a Michael, if I'm understanding what your question is well enough, it's that whether or not the brand that CW wants to move towards is even something that is going to make it will continue the CW's existence outside of the US for an
yeah.
international audience. And I'm unsure. And I say that because they're telling us two things at once, right? So it is when Nexstar first took over, it was we want to be essentially America first, right? Like our programming is going to not necessarily create a firestorm, but become more recognizable within the boundaries of the United States. But at the same time, because of their low licensing fee that they're willing to pay, they are going outside of the US to have co-productions in Canada or in Sophie Turner shows. Like for that one, it's
Mhm.
the UK. So it's like, well, what are we doing, right? Are we US based, US focused, or are we international? You can't geolock people out of CW content, but at the same time, be farming for content outside of the US and making it very difficult for American studios to produce content for you
Hmm.
without they themselves also getting an international partner to even land this. I know they said they wanted to open the doors to the other studios outside of CBS and Warner Brothers. I don't know how well that's going to work for those who are not doing for those who are doing scripted programming instead of unscripted. I think unscripted is probably having an easier time at the CW than those who are looking to place a scripted show.
Yeah, I mean, I know they said that. I just can't see them partnering with like Disney or NBC Universal. Like that,
Mm-mm. Not at
not
1 million
yet.
to $1.5 million
Yeah,
per
not yet.
episode. You know, they have to, like, that licensing fee is gonna have to go up because they're not doing shows at that price point. They'll just
No.
keep it in house or go
Yeah, if
elsewhere.
like if there's this is entirely hypothetical, but if Fox was like, we're actually going to cancel 911 Lone Star, and ABC was kind of like, don't look at us. I don't think the CW is going to be like, we'll take it. Like they just
Yeah.
don't have
Mm-mm.
the bank account yet.
Or the
I know.
infrastructure
Yeah.
to carry a show like that.
I know. I did read, obviously, apparently Lone Star is significantly cheaper than the main 911, but like even at that, I'm not sure that's cheap enough for the CW. Um, it's interesting in this general era of like that they are doing international productions, but those other than the US, they're only aiming for those shows to be a hit in the country they're made in. So obviously Joan in the UK, Wild Cards in Canada. But at the same time, this is the same CW that wanted more domestic hits, more focus on the US audience. Um, so it does. I do think the original CW made a mistake by dropping the Netflix deal because I do think Walker could have been a hit on Netflix. I think maybe Nancy Drew could have been a hit on Netflix because they're recognizable IPs outside of the US. I just don't know whether the modern versions of them are recognizable outside of the US. If they landed on Netflix, they could have been. Obviously, Nexstar's having something of a similar idea by reviving a couple of Netflix deals here and there for certain programming. But like for things like inside the NFL, I just don't think it's going to have the same like global draw. Someone who sits down on Netflix to watch Stranger Things is not suddenly going to say, "Oh, I'll watch Inside the NFL." You know, whereas they might say, "Oh, Nancy Drew looks spooky," and click on that. So it's just I think that losing the international appeal can hurt both the CW, it can hurt the studios that produce the shows because the studios have to pay a higher licensing fee or a higher fee because the CW is paying a lower licensing fee. They could still make the money back from Netflix deals or streaming deals, but the last remaining few shows on the CW are getting old now, and we don't know if they capitalized on them when they were younger. So I don't know whether there is any big, huge streaming deals out there for them in today's day and age. And since they're the last of that kind, there probably aren't going to be any more. So I think there was a boat was missed to make some money, and now it's just like, well, what are we going to do with these shows? We're still left with them. I do think Walker stands a solid chance of renewal, and I hope for the fans that it does get it for at least one more season. But it's a real shame because, like I said, in its domestic audience on the CW, I think that show could have lasted for about 7 or 8 seasons, whereas now it feels like it'll be lucky if it makes it past five.
How many episodes does season 4 have?
13, is it?
13, yeah. Because they all
Okay.
got 13 to get into All American has 15.
Hmm.
Okay. I was
And that
wondering if it
is
was
going to
10 because I could see it coming back for 10 for the final,
Mm.
fifth and
mm-hmm.
final.
You could
Or
definitely see that.
less, maybe. Who knows? Wasn't Gossip Girl's final season? Was it 6 or 10?
Don't know.
Can't remember. I think it's 10. It might even be 12. But I remember at the time I was like, whoa, that's really low.
Hmm.
Lo and behold, just 10 years later, it's the norm.
It's the norm. One thing though we haven't touched on is why, CW is not actually that concerned about bringing back these scripted dramas like um in their entirety as far as where they stand now, where they've cut the budget. And it's because we have started the Nexstar era rollout for shows for
Hmm.
their scripted dramas. Yes, I know some people are confused. They think that all of them are acquisitions. They are all not. Sullivan's Crossing was an acquisition. It will go into co-production with the CW come season two. Wild Cards is a co-production and most likely will get renewed for a season two and be back on the network. Good Good Cop, Bad Cop, starring Leighton Meester, which is coming, I believe, next year, is also a co-production, a three-way co-production, actually. And Joan is a co-production. I don't remember if The Librarian's Next Chapter is a co-production. It probably is.
Hmm.
And so they don't actually they're getting their scripted drama roster together. They don't actually really need All American Homecoming and Walker to fill the schedule anymore. It's why they're not necessarily that concerned about renewing them. Which I guess there was kind of a mention of that when Brad Sports was talking about how it's the price point isn't really the issue anymore now. It would just be about how well a show is doing. But the price point isn't an issue anymore because they have shows coming.
Hmm.
Like they could just decide if it's doing well, cool, we'll keep it. But this is the way that we're going to keep it, and they get to have more of a say than they did previously, which for those of us who enjoyed the pre-Nexstar era, that's not great. But in some ways, I am kind of glad that the network has gotten to this point because now we can see they're going to have to stand on their own 2 feet. And
Yeah.
so far, with all the programming that they've rolled out for scripted, the only 2 shows that have really made a supreme impact, the way that other CW tempos have, is Sullivan's Crossing and Wild Cards. But
Hmm.
they only needed 2. Now they just need to get a third, and probably in the next year or two they'll have like 5, and that's enough for them to continue to experiment and make a splash in this network TV pool.
Yeah, I know there's been an awful lot of conversation about how the CW's new era had a lot more losses than wins, and I mean that was not necessarily untrue. But whatever happened to Everything Else Burns or whatever it's called, the Zac Efron documentary, the wasn't it their new era launch of that Surfer Australian series that was pulled after 2 episodes.
What about that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
um, whereas
What was it called?
I can't remember.
Is that Barron's?
That's the one.
Oh yeah.
That's the one.
Hmm.
And but then on the other hand, they had the UK Supernatural one, which did last its full 6 episodes because the ratings were decent. Of course, now we have the likes of Wild Cards, we have the likes of Sullivan's Crossing. The Chosen continues to do well for them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, I feel like there was another one. I think Spencer Sisters did decent for them. I haven't heard a head nor tail mention of that, but it did quite solid numbers for them. With the likes of Walker now dropping into the 400,000s, we have Wild Cards did better than it. We have that it's close to on par with the likes of Sullivan's Crossing. So it does come. Yes, we don't want to replace the 3 or last remaining shows altogether because then you've lost 3 relative hits. But at the same time, if they can get those numbers for not having to spend as much money, I also see from a business standpoint why the acquisition era might be starting to work. They're not exactly building an audience in the way the old CW did. They're just a hub for all these random shows, but these
Well, yeah,
random shows are
because
drawing an audience.
the old CW hit 2 niches really well.
Yeah.
Like they
Hmm.
saw holes in the market for young viewers and then for like genre content, and they filled those holes. Um, and you can see the networks constantly have influence over each other, constantly. And I think the CW's influence, whether anybody wants to admit it or not, they had an influence on the other 4 networks and
Oh
some
Hmm.
of
yeah.
the programming they picked up. I mean, they're not the only ones. They all influence each other. But now there's really no niche because they're trying to be this, like, I don't know. It just seems like the aim is just to be on the same level. And it's like, well, I guess it goes back to brand. What's your brand? What's the niche? You don't really have one. You're just like, I mean, yeah, I love wild cards, but realistically, it could be on any network. Like,
Hmm.
I
Mhm.
don't know. It's just I feel like they're gonna end up going into a niche, and it would make me laugh hysterically if it ended up being the niche ended up being like teens or superhero genre or something. And it's like, well, now what? We're back to where we were.
Yeah.
Right? Because the other networks are very procedural heavy. I mean, that is CBS and NBC's brand. Well, NBC more so is like, we are the home of these 3, like the Law and Orders, the home of the Chicagos, and that's really what they're known for. And then the other hits they've had, they're one-off hits for themselves. Like,
Mhm.
and CBS is best network on TV. But they also it's procedural heaven from Monday to Friday for the most part, and even like the comedies have a procedural nature to them.
Although
Mhm.
your little network can catch these hands for canceling Todd.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. And I mean, you could tell too when the deadline writers are writing about these cancellations for CBS, how like hurtful it is that it's like it's not about the success of the show because while it's a low rated show for CBS, those both So Help Me Todd and CSI Vegas, I believe, were bringing in more of an audience than some of the other network shows.
See, I thought Todd was like they were high on its supply last season. Season one, it was
Hmm.
stable, it did well, and it's like, well, what went wrong? I don't get it. It's a cute little show. I don't know.
The
I could
schedule
have a
might have hurt
different
it.
discussion with you about CBS because there's a little bit of mess going on. I feel like with the shows
Ooh,
they're picking up and canceling. I will. It's not the time or place, but
we're gonna have it because I love this. I do because I mean it is. We're this is what happens when franchises get way too successful. Like, but moving away from that, we're tabling that conversation. I really want to have it.
Sweet, like I will remember you said that, and we will be circling back.
Yes, but um, yeah. So I think that I don't even know what ABC's brand is. I don't.
Grey's Anatomy, and now they have
Mhm.
911, so they're just
Yeah,
like
right.
we're
Yeah.
bulletproof, and I'm like, good for you.
That's true. So they're
They
basically
used to
like,
they used to have like soapy stuff, but now I
Yeah.
feel like they got away from that. That was like the 2000s era was like soaps for them.
so now they're like, we have big tent poles. Just
Yeah,
come for when those ones air.
we have whatever's a hit is what we're doing.
Right. And then, but what's interesting about Fox though is that CW is influencing Fox, even in its struggle era, because Fox has acquired a Canadian show, I believe, that is going to be launching in, is that the fall? It's it's starring, I believe it's starring the small actress who played Lana Lang. It's a
Oh,
I think she's a
yes.
Oh,
librarian.
wait.
Yes, yes, yes. I
This
forgot
sounds
about that.
familiar. They have that like Hawaii surf Baywatch 911
Hmm.
situation happening, right?
Yes, they do, but that's not an acquisition.
Yeah, yeah,
That is
yeah.
theirs. But
I'm
the
interested in that.
Rescue High Surf could have had a better name, but I'm also interested
911
in that.
Baywatch.
uh, but like it's just Fox is interesting because I think Fox is kind of always Fox is the action channel. Like if there's going to
Hmm.
be a new show on Fox, typically it's action driven.
Fox is the scrappy little brother of the broadcast networks. I don't know what the CW is. Is she like the fun little sister that's like, "Can
She
you give me a
was.
ride?
She was.
She
Can
was.
I get a ride to the mall with you and your friends?"
She's grown up a little and lost herself along the
She's
way.
broke, is what she is,
CBS
and
is in
she's trying.
college. NBC just bought a house. No, wait. I'll clean up this metaphor and we'll talk about it later. Because
Okay,
I
well,
can see it's all
CBS is the
clicking in my
grown
head.
one. I know
Yeah, yeah,
CBS
yeah.
is the
She
one with the
graduated from
house.
college. She's getting her PhD. She's getting married.
Hmm.
NBC, bought a house. ABC just broke up with her boyfriend, but she's doing really well in her job.
I love this. I For the CW, the little sister, it's weird to be in this era. I feel like we've been saying that for the past 2 years though, but it is interesting to be able to see and pay attention to a rebranding like this because we were all aware of the rebranding from UPN and WB into the CW, but we were also children. So like the
Yeah.
change was just happening around us now as adults in the industry. It is wild,
It's a different marketplace
very
with
much so.
streaming and all the different kind of monopolies happening.
Hmm.
And I mean, back then it was still just TV was an untouched industry. There was
Hmm.
nothing else going up against it. And now it's a mess.
It is a mess. And I will say, and this is not a conversation for this pod, but the streamers can fight me. As a lover of network TV, the idea that we're circling back to the same model that they were like, it's a dinosaur, it doesn't work for this generation of consumers, and yet you're doing the exact same
And they're
thing.
like, we've got bundles, we've got live channels. And it's like,
Hmm.
you mean television?
Weekly releases, procedurals.
Wow.
I
Oh,
know.
revolutionary.
It's just, and they really truly are trying to sell us a brand new bag. Like it's not the one we sell for $5 in the bargain bucket.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
I just,
True, it's really something else. We weren't born yesterday.
I know. It is very aggravating.
The
I'm just,
circle of life. The circle of
Every time I
life.
see a headline, it's like so and so is bundling with this streaming service, and I'm like, that's cable.
mhm. It's just wow. Which I mean, I do appreciate though. The Congress is like slow your roll with the I don't remember which streamers are all involved in this thing with the sports. that they're trying to launch for.
Hmm.
But the fact that was Congress is like, wait, hold up, pump the brakes. What is this? Because it's not, you're not about to put the TV networks out of business when it
Right.
comes to the sports
It's
content.
truly just so funny that it was like, oh, you mean that we can, watch television online? That's so cool. And then we had it was like a little bit, and then it grew in a way that it just created a monster. And
Mm-hmm.
now
Hmm.
we're like seeing the effects of that slowdown and that like minimizing a little bit, and it's messy.
Oh, it's very
But it's so funny
messy.
to see it go from like TV and streaming to like streaming is becoming TV again. It's like a reminder that everything is cyclical.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That's
Which,
why vinyl is back.
yes,
Yes.
at too high a price point, but it's better.
Yeah.
But to circle back to something that you said, Reed, this does mean you were right. If we do end up back in the YA superhero lane at the CW and we're still doing this podcast, we're gonna be like, run it back. What did I say?
Write it down, timestamp, time and day. I don't know. I just see it happening and it's
Hmm.
frustrating and hilarious.
Yeah.
'Cause, sorry, just to be a business, you need a niche.
Yeah.
They don't have one. I mean,
And they're gonna find out that young people want to watch TV. People
mhm.
who like superheroes want to watch TV. People who like whatever Riverdale and Supernatural were want to watch TV. That's why
Hmm.
Hmm.
Supernatural is still one of the biggest shows on streaming.
Right. And
Oh.
honestly, since we've moved into this era of big scale cinematic shows on streaming, it's harder for TV networks to compete. They still are, and they're doing a solid job of it. But obviously, the ratings these days are much lower than they were in the old days. And I get it; it makes sense. So I don't. It's just going to be a struggle for the CW just to have a network full of random collection of procedurals, low budget shows, everything that people aren't consuming these days. They're doing a solid job of it, but I think the longer they get on, those numbers will start slightly going down again instead of going up.
I mean, here's a free idea. I haven't given a free idea to the CW in a minute, so here's one. Netflix has, in some way, somehow managed to succeed with multiple niches. It is
Mhm.
confounding how this business model has worked for this streaming service. It's wild. It has its faults, but it's still wild how successful it can make any kind of show. But if the CW wanted to copy off of its homework, steal its low budget action shows,
Mm.
Yeah,
make a night agent, make a recruit, make those are hits. Make a FUBAR. Like
yeah,
those are also doing well on broadcast too.
yeah.
But like copy off Netflix's homework. No one's really doing that. Like
Hmm.
where I'm surprised we haven't gotten the copycat night agent.
Mm. Um,
Fox would
that's a
do it if they
yeah.
had the budget to provide.
That's a good point because that awkward acquisition era when we started kind of had something similar in professionals. Now,
I
now,
that memory
yeah.
unlocked.
As soon as you mentioned Fubar, I was like, "Who's the TV?" Arnold Schwarzenegger, and then Brendan Fraser and Tom Welling came to mind. I was like, they deserve better than that show." So it does make you wonder if they could choose a veteran CW star like that, slightly lower budget show, but with higher quality cameras than professionals had, and just make it look slightly cinematic. I do think there's a niche there. If they can partner with a Canadian company on it, brilliant. So that they don't have to put up all the money, fantastic. But you're right, there has to be something out there because the CW was always the one with the flashy lights and the explosions or the like discos and the young people. And it's like something that dragged the younger audience into it. And younger audiences are still watching television. So there has to be something there. There has to be a
There's
niche.
something there with serialized action,
Yeah.
Hmm.
clearly, because it's been a big trend on Netflix.
Well, I want to put forward an idea as well. And this is
Okay.
to speak about American studios. If we're going to be this low in a licensing fee, then and this was Nexstar probably isn't the company who even wants to entertain this, but I'm going to put it forward anyway. Open the door for younger creators.
There we
They
go.
don't
Mhm.
need a larger budget. They wouldn't know what to do with it anyway. They need to start off with a smaller budget to get their ideas out there. If the CW were to have a niche that isn't like serialized action or hits that, are proven, to be money makers, it would be the network that you can get your start on because it used to be the network that you could get your start on. A lot of younger creators launched their first shows on the CW. and they have gone on to make better shows. You have to start somewhere. So if the CW is the little sister of the Big Five, then why doesn't she just be a tastemaker again, an
Hmm.
innovator?
Yeah, it's surprising that they haven't, because I know the studio signed stars to overall deals, like stars that are producers. I feel like the CW could do that with like a Camila Mendez or something. I don't know if she's a
Hmm.
producer. I feel like she is. But like Madeline Petch or any of the Riverdale girls, like that seems like a really good uh and I really great idea is to like bring in younger stars with good ideas and an audience.
Be an incubator network. Take a
Yeah,
chance on someone who doesn't have a name. Take a chance on the
true.
stars that
Yeah.
do have names. I believe Camila is a producer because I think she produced Upgraded for Prime Video
Hmm.
and Musica for Prime Video. I think she's one of the producers for
See,
both of
there we
those
go.
films.
Those are both hits that were well received.
Yeah, so I just feel like, why are we worrying about being like the other members of the big networks? You're not. We know that. I mean, so don't be.
Do what the CW always did and be subversive. Do something a little bit different.
Hmm.
Yeah. Like we're in this movies aren't the same thing, but we're in this era where like horror movies, like low budget horror movies, are being acclaimed for thinking outside the box, not spending an awful lot of money and trying different things. Horror is not my genre. But if the CW had a creator who was able to do clever things like that with a smaller budget, be it in the horror genre or be it in another one, and be this up and coming name in television, heck, make it an 8-part series. I'm not a big fan of those 8-part movie ideas on streaming, but like the old CW was getting to a way where it was starting to have streaming quality television on television and Stargirl and Superman at Lois. Why not let Nexstar do the same thing like that? Cut the episode count, keep it small, think outside the box, and do something innovative with whatever you've got. It might turn out to be a hit, but if it's not, you didn't spend an awful lot of money on it and you can move on.
To your point about movies, we have brought up the movie idea for the CW
Yeah,
Hmm.
true.
for a long time. Like, do a trilogy like Fear Street or something.
And then
That'd be
sell it
so
to a
fun.
streamer worldwide. Yeah.
I think to for the horror though, I remember Brad had said something about them in talks with Blumhouse.
Hmm.
Blumhouse. So, but that was what, a year ago? And
Yeah.
so
Maybe around
maybe
then,
it's
yeah.
still cooking and we might see something about that. I really want to see the summer slate. Like I would love for like this podcast episode in some ways to age poorly. Like
Yeah.
I would love for them to like show us the summer slate and it's like bangers, like
Hmm.
or like potential bangers. If they're they're because they were doing that, was it Sunday or Saturday movies they were doing on the CW without advertising
Saturday.
them.
Yeah. Was it Saturday evening, I think?
Oh,
Yeah,
that's right. They had like the wedding planner on and stuff.
And Bring It On,
yeah.
I think.
Like, could you imagine if the summer is a new CW produced movie
I would
nearly
love that
every
surprise.
Saturday?
Yeah. That'd be
Like,
amazing.
I would love for them to move in silence and then to be like, hey, guess what? We have 6 movies coming up that we made in secret.
I mean, like, yes, like age this podcast episode like milk. I would love it because for us, this conversation is coming from a place of love. It's not coming from a place of we don't
Oh
like this
yeah.
network and we're dragging it.
We
It's
just we're
that,
brainstorming. We got
Yeah.
yeah,
we're spitballing.
I
right?
am. I always remember that era about a decade ago when WWE started making movies. They had their little WWE banner. That's how the Marines started with John Cena in it, and then it became a huge big franchise. And we had See No Evil starring Kane, and then they did a sequel a few years later. Why not have the CW could do that? Have like a cheaper, low budget branch of movies, maybe starring a CW star every so often, just to reel people in. They don't have to be amazing to start with, but if the actor can get the people in, keep the budget low, keep it simple, and then who knows, the more successful it can be, maybe we can increase the budget to work on the scripts, make them stronger, and maybe you've got a solid mini action franchise or something under your belt. I don't think there's definitely potential to that.
Yeah. Do you remember? Just remember this. Do you remember when I pitched like a talk show and
Yes.
I
Yeah.
pitched Megan
Hmm.
Trainor as the host? She was the guest mentor on American Idol last week. And when I was watching it, I was like, this girl has just got personality oozing out. And I know she has her own podcast, but I'm like, I was onto something.
Yeah.
Like if she doesn't become the new judge to replace Katy Perry, or if like someone doesn't scoop her up for something, I'm like, we're leaving talent on the table. Like she's got so much charisma. And I was like, I was at
You were
least
cooking.
preheated.
Yeah, no, you were
At
cooking.
least preheated the oven.
I mean, okay, so Mole, if they're thinking about daytime talk shows on the CW, like a syndicated one that runs nationally, or they're thinking of, trying their hand at late night TV for one of these slots, Megan is right there, Megan
If she
Trainor,
wants to do it,
if
or
she
some
wants to do
other
it.
personable pop star.
Yes. I mean, there's just so many lanes that they could take and they could try. We really could be here all day if we were spitballing. We have so many ideas that we're
Mhm.
giving away for free. Again, consult us, CW, with a bag. Like, but I don't.
Our licensing fee would be smaller than Walker's.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. Reel them in, reel them in.
I don't have a degree in business, but I can, I can do some business.
But
Yeah.
you know what? We're entertainment writers, so we know this. We're true to this. We get
Mhm.
it.
Okay, this is the last thing I'll say because we should wrap up. But I decided to go back into the archives and reread Lauren Conrad's novel series, LA Candy.
Hmm.
Um,
Oh no.
no,
What?
no, 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 no. It's so funny that I'm rereading a book that I read when I was like 15. I love it. It's just relaxing. But while I'm rereading it, I remember feeling, because I read it the day that it came out, the book, and I remember thinking, this would be a great show on the CW.
Mhm.
Not doing your
Like,
producer's hat. Ready.
always, always. And while I'm reading it, I like Googled it. I was like, was that me or was that actually a thing that happened? Like 2 months after the book came out, I found an article from Variety in like August 2009 that said that so and so like bought the rights to the book to produce it into a movie or a TV show. Never happened, obviously. But I'm like, I mean, it's still sitting here.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I don't think the CW would do it though, because it's about like it's basically the hills. It's her
Mhm.
her experiences on the hills. Um,
Hmm. Well, I
but I
mean,
feel like it would still be a good show somewhere. In that era on the CW, it would have
Yeah.
it would
soared.
still work. This is the network that has been airing F-Boy Island and Lovers and Liars. They have
Okay.
Patty Matchmaker, a Patty Stranger, the Matchmaker on there as well. They are not above LA Candy.
Mhm.
Lauren Conrad, my queen, if you're at home, I know you're doing your Kohl's thing and your fashion, and if you're thinking like, "Ah, I wish LA Candy would have been a show. Let's link up. I have no connections, but I have ideas.
We should definitely end there. But so thank you for watching, you guys. We're the CW Spiral. I'm Sabrina.
I'm Michael.
And I'm Reed.
Bye, y'all.